Hi, I'm Ilona Varo, and thank you for tuning in for Thrive Through the Holidays. I am joined with my good friend and naturopathic doctor, Dr. Allie McLane, and we're going to be chatting about how to thrive through the holidays from the naturopathic lens. So, other than naturopathic doctor, what else can you share about yourself and your practice? And then we'll dive right into all the good stuff.
Yeah, thank you, Ilana. So, like she said, I'm a naturopathic doctor. I focus on women's health, gut health, hormonal health, and mental health. So, kind of the fusion of all of those together. And I'm excited to be having this conversation with you today and see kind of where it goes because there's lots of good things to talk about around this topic. So,
Yeah, absolutely. So let's just kind of dive into red flags that people should be aware of around the holiday season. I mean, you mentioned gut health, mental health, hormonal health. All
yeah.
those things are very much interconnected. What are things that we should really be on the lookout for, given the fact that it's, the time change, it gets dark earlier, we might be craving certain foods and comfort and
Yeah.
some holiday habits that maybe aren't necessarily supportive of our mental and physical and hormonal health.
Yeah, yeah. So, I mean, to me, the holidays are a cultural thing, and we have this physiologic set of needs, and those needs really shouldn't stray just because of a cultural phenomenon that kind of seeks to create an environment for us to be in like a depleted dopamine state. That's really the way that I see it. So there's a lot more emphasis on purchasing things, whether that's like being in front of a screen and buying items or being indoors under blue light. That also kind of creates that depleted dopamine state, eating more sugar, eating more like unhealthy foods. So the red flags are kind of just the normal things that would occur during the holiday season in terms of like the buying and the purchasing behavior as well as like the sugar and nutrient depleted food. So really like not straying off your routine from that and keeping that in mind when the season is happening, acknowledging that, okay, I see how this might be impacting my brain from a dopamine standpoint. How can I give my body what it needs during this time? So I really like to focus on just going back to the basics. I'm a basics person, as you know. So really emphasizing like circadian rhythm health. That's really like the first thing. Because if your circadian health, like you mentioned, it's getting dark earlier. If your circadian health is regulated, then you're going to be less likely to want to engage in those low dopamine behaviors, like eating more high sugar foods or unhealthy foods, or buying more things that you don't need or whatever it is. And so if you're getting up in the morning, you're getting morning sunlight, like you're actually getting outside and getting that sunlight on your body, that's going to be really beneficial. And then same thing, midday light. And then when the sun goes down at night, making sure that your indoor environment is mimicking the outdoor environment as much as possible. And then in terms of eating your normal nutrient dense foods, that's going to play a role as well. With the timing of that, making sure that you're eating those foods at regular intervals throughout the day. So you're not like, for example, one day eating breakfast at 7 a.m. and then the next day, like not eating breakfast until noon or just skipping breakfast altogether. So all those things are going to play a role.
Beautiful. I feel like you just said so much wisdom in such a short period of time. So we want to kind of dig in
Yeah,
there. But I
absolutely.
love that framework of support your body as if it's just a regular day, a regular season. Do what is primarily in your best interest, focus on the
Yes.
basics. And
Yes.
then on top of that, be mindful of the cultural, societal norms and pressures and things that might make you veer off your track of supporting your body to the best of your ability.
Absolutely.
Obviously, we're not perfect. And I love that you're
Yeah.
constantly, literally today, earlier, you were talking about like the imperfection of just us all. So,
Mhm.
how can we maybe boost or give ourselves a little leeway knowing that we're not going to do this perfectly? Are there some kinds of tips and guidelines knowing that, we are going to have more sugar, we are going to be buying things, we are going to be buying
Absolutely.
into these things that are joyful and, can contribute to
Yeah.
happiness and celebration and connection. So it's not,
Yeah.
I know you're not like an all or nothing,
No,
this is all
not at
bad
all.
either.
Yeah.
So what's a realistic way to kind of approach this and make it manageable for us?
Absolutely. And the first thing that I gave was kind of just a framework,
Yes.
but obviously, like, we're humans and we're imperfect, like you said. So that's not going to ever be implemented perfectly. But let's say it is an imperfect day where you do find yourself engaging in a lot of consumption of foods that might not make you feel the best. Okay, so after you do that, the following day, you might not feel the best, right? So making sure that that day is a priority, it's a priority for you to keep that blood sugar regulated, or something that you can do prior to the meals. This can be the day after or even before a meal if you know that you're going to, engage in maybe something that's going to keep your blood sugar a little bit dysregulated or like on that roller coaster, is you can use something called bitters, herbal bitters. So those are basically just herbs that come in a little tincture bottle that you can squirt on your tongue or in a little glass of water like this, and you take it like a shot. And that can really help with your digestive juices, getting them flowing. It can help with stomach acid secretion, bile secretion, all the enzymes in your mouth. So that way your body is more prepared to assimilate and digest the nutrients from your food. And it can also help keep your blood sugar a little bit regulated. Also, apple cider vinegar is another option for that, to kind of keep that blood sugar regulated. And if you are eating more food that's higher in processed carbs or higher in sugar, just make sure to pair that with some protein, because protein or even fat will keep your blood sugar a lot more stable as you're digesting those foods. So if you're indulging in some pumpkin pie or something like that, having some animal protein or plant protein or whatever that is with that meal as well. So that would set you up for a lot less of a shift with your blood sugar.
Awesome. And I know earlier today I was speaking with a nutritionist or dietitian rather, who was saying, it's not about all or nothing.
Yeah.
It's just make sure you're not starving yourself all day long and then
Yes.
going head first into the pumpkin pie. So that
That
just
too.
reiterates really what you were saying too, is be mindful, pair it with things that's going to make you feel better in the long run, because I mean, in my line of work, I see so much like regret and remorse and people beating
Yeah.
themselves up when they don't feel
Yeah.
good. And just, there's ways to get ahead of these patterns and these habits. And we can have all the fun, enjoyable things, but maybe in a more mindful way so that we're not then crashing afterwards and feeling crappy and then beating ourselves up, or
Yeah.
New Year comes around and there's this whole like, well, now I have to revamp my whole lifestyle and be a completely different version of myself. So it's
Yeah.
really just like integrating smaller things, making it more manageable instead of that all or nothing mentality.
Exactly. Yeah. And something that my family does, I mean, it depends on your family and what your family enjoys doing around the holidays, but on Thanksgiving morning, we usually go for a hike, like in the
Beautiful.
morning. So, or
Yeah.
if that's, if you live somewhere where there's not hiking, just go for a nice walk, as long of a walk
Yeah.
as you feels good. And just walking alone is going to help regulate your blood sugar. Also, if you walk after your meals. So if you eat a
Yeah.
really big meal and you feel a little like, wow, okay, this is kind of making me feel like a zombie, try to get up and go for a couple walks around the block. And that will help with your insulin response to your meal. So, for every little thing, there's a counterbalance to that. And
Hmm.
again, it doesn't have to be perfection. It's just finding that mindfulness and the decisions that you do make, and meeting your body and balancing it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. What other little lifestyle tricks do you like to incorporate during the holidays, and what helps you feel, for example?
I think there's a little bit of a lag. I want to make sure. Can you hear me okay?
Oh, sure. I can hear you. Yeah. Let me know if you want me to repeat the question.
I think you asked me if there were lifestyle tips and tricks that I have. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So there's a couple of things. I mean, it's again, it all comes back to the basics. So um like you mentioned, your nutritionist colleague was saying, like, not starving yourself, starting off the day and like getting proper nutrition, making sure you're eating breakfast. Just because you're eating Thanksgiving don't be like, oh, I'm going to eat a Thanksgiving dinner, so I'm not going to eat anything for breakfast and lunch, because you're setting yourself up to then, be in a state where your blood sugar is really dysregulated and you're going to overeat, right? And one of the great things to me about Thanksgiving is like leftovers, right? So like if you feel full at Thanksgiving, like, and you enjoy the food, you don't have to keep eating it if you don't want to, because there's going to be plenty of leftovers for the next day or next couple of days that you can enjoy, right? So there's that as well. Um, Walking, bitters, staying hydrated, getting sunshine, going outside. Naturopathically, like it's really just about supporting your body, like meeting your body where it's at. And, if you feel like you've gone too far with eating, okay, how do you regulate your blood sugar? You go for a walk, um, move your body. The following day, make sure that you're moving your body, make sure that you're getting in your protein, give all that glucose somewhere to go, maybe do a workout, lift some weights. If you feel like you're anxious around this time, we didn't really talk about that, because it's really just
Mm,
like, what it is that's coming up for you. If you feel like you're anxious around, your family, making sure that you're taking that space for yourself, like I always like to create maybe a little bit of an energetic bubble around me. When I go into these scenarios with other people, there might be people that you haven't seen in a long time. There might be things that trigger you, and just creating that like safe kind of, I'm okay, like here I am, and like I'm an adult. I can choose to interact when I want to interact, and if I need to disengage at any time, I'm an adult and I can do that. And that's the really awesome part of this. And I'm choosing to be here because I want to be here. And that's what's so cool about it, is I can be here when I want to be here, and if I don't want to be here anymore, I don't have to be here. And that's
hmm
awesome.
Yeah, boundaries. It always comes back to having healthy, strong
I know you know
boundaries
this.
that you repeat. And yeah, we were talking, I think another person I was talking about with earlier today, and it never hurts to repeat these things. Like
Yeah,
literally the theme of, this series is like be attuned to yourself, check in with
yeah,
yourself, know your needs, honor your
yeah,
needs, don't
yeah,
restrict binge, like don't fall into that cycle. Really about trying to find balance. I know balance is such a triggering word for a lot of people, but
yeah,
imperfect balance. It's not
yeah,
about like finding the perfect balance. It's
yeah,
literally just like you said, trying to counterbalance when things kind of go off to the left. Try to bring it a little bit more to the center, just it's constantly a dance, and you have to find your flow and be compassionate with yourself and just kind of move through it all. Um,
hmm,
but I wanted to ask, what are your thoughts about alcohol? I know during
hmm,
the holiday season, that tends to be a thing too. People are just drinking more than usual, whether it's because they're around family and they're trying to cope, or it's more of the celebratory aspect.
yeah,
What is your take on alcohol?
yeah. I mean, it's going to be different for every person, right? Family structures are going to have people maybe that drink more or that drink less or that don't drink at all. It's all about knowing yourself and knowing what your tolerance is, especially in relation to other people. So you're not just drinking yourself, but you're drinking around other people that you might have, um, more specific relationships with, right? So now you're going to be in more of a state where things might come up. So from the mental health perspective, like just knowing your limit. And I think most people like know the amount of drinks that they can have before it's too many drinks, right? And if you're the person where it's like, really, I shouldn't drink at all, then you know that. And that's really just between you and you. From the naturopathic like liver health standpoint, I think you know how I feel about this. Alcohol is a toxin, right? It gets metabolized into something called acetaldehyde, which is really toxic to our body. And I don't think anyone's ever arguing that alcohol is good for you, but most people, do consume it. So knowing that with consumption, obviously there's going to be a curve of the more that you consume, the more toxic it will be. So everything in moderation, right? If it's something that it's where you're connecting with other people and it brings you joy to have other people together and you're sharing some drinks together, that's great. But just knowing that moderation is really key. And again, not being perfect around it, but knowing that there is and there should be a limit. And again, like this holiday mentality of like, well, it's the holidays, so everything goes out the window. Like, don't think of it that way. Think of it as any other night that you would go and engage in a dinner with your friends and you would order a drink. Would you order like 5 drinks? Probably not. You'd probably order one or two. So those are my thoughts there.
Yeah, yeah, I love that. I always emphasize being honest with ourselves in my work and just, when it comes
Yeah.
up in relationship to food and when people are kind of struggling with behaviors that they're really wanting to change. And I find that whenever we start to go into like, oh, well, it's the holidays or oh, well,
Hmm.
it's blank, fill in the
Hmm.
blank, when we start to
Yeah.
negotiate and we
Yeah.
start to just kind of make it okay, to me,
Yeah.
that's a red flag that
Yeah.
we need to pay attention to what's happening here. Whenever
Abs-
we just kind of put a little phrase on it, like, oh,
Yeah.
well, but it's Friday, or oh,
Yeah.
well, but it's whatever, I
Yeah.
think that's an instant disconnect from our true authentic selves. And that's where we start to not feel good because we're
Like,
making an excuse, but it doesn't really
yeah.
feel aligned. And we know we're kind of lying to ourselves.
Yeah.
So that's usually something I like to encourage people to pay attention to is, what do you tell yourself around the behavior that maybe after the fact you're regretting or not too, you're not feeling great about it? What was it that you told yourself? And next time, that's the phrase that you really need to pay attention to.
Absolutely. And also like how it feels when you make a commitment to yourself and then you break that commitment to yourself. That doesn't feel good to anyone, right? So
Yeah.
if you've made a commitment to yourself around drinking, that commitment still holds during the
Yeah.
holidays or around any behavior really. So
Yeah.
absolutely, I agree.
Yeah. And even, I think when people, I certainly have had clients say, like, well, whatever, it's not that big of a deal, or I don't care, broke a commitment to self, whatever. Well, then let's look at your other relationships. If you're
Yeah.
breaking commitments to yourself,
Yeah.
it's probably not an isolated incident. Maybe then you don't really value your word to others, or you don't hold a standard of integrity in some other area of your life. So this is obviously where we get into the weeds with therapy and
Yeah.
really dig deep, but
Yeah.
that is something important to pay attention to. As far as alcohol, you talked about counterbalancing, let's say if we overdo it with sugar or something like that. Is there
Yeah.
something that can help support our bodies if we are choosing to have a glass of wine or something? Is there
Yeah.
anything that can maybe make us feel better? I know I've seen a lot of like hangover things and like there's so much product and things that are being marketed. What actually supports the body if we are choosing to have alcohol?
Yeah, so it depends because some of the hangover support, if you're taking it after you consume alcohol, can actually make you feel worse because it can speed up the metabolism and maybe lead to more secondary metabolites. So, what might be better is if you're planning ahead and wanting to take some support, taking it before. So, really, just the standard liver support in naturopathic medicine looks like N-acetylcysteine or NAC. That's a good one. It's a glutathione precursor. If you have liposomal glutathione, that's awesome. B vitamins, methylated B vitamins can help with detox. Milk thistle is a good herb that a lot of people use. Burdock root is another one. There's lots of teas that support liver health that are just different liver blends, like Traditional Medicinals is a good brand that sells some nice detox blends that will have like liver and kidney support. So there's so many things to kind of use there, but I would recommend if you're going to be using them, maybe on the front end of drinking, before drinking, and then into the following day, like the night of, maybe not consuming it after, because I have seen that make hangovers worse, and I have seen that make people feel worse. So
Interesting.
that is something to consider. And then the following day, like if you're, unfortunately really hungover for some reason, then that would, maybe indicate a need to focus on hydration, focus on minerals, sodium and potassium, getting some protein in your body, getting some light, getting some sunlight, regulating your circadian rhythm. So yeah, those are my thoughts on that. But really just the main thing is if you are drinking, planning ahead, making sure that you're eating enough food with it. And then if you're going to do that support, doing that on the front end.
Love it.
Yeah.
It's really ringing home the messaging that we need to be attuned to ourselves. And obviously, I
Yeah.
hope I don't need to make the disclaimer at every time, but this is not medical advice, right? Be sure to
No,
check in with
never.
your own professional. This is
Yeah.
just purely educational information to
Yeah.
get curious about.
Yeah.
But really, that's the message here is learn about your own body, learn about your own behavior, be really attuned, aware, witnessing how you show up in the world. And that's kind of how we can guarantee that we feel our best, is because we're monitoring. It's like, it can sound like a lot of work, but at the end of the day, I think knowledge is power. Knowing yourself is incredibly powerful. And that way we feel more empowered too. We're not outsourcing our well-being to someone else, but really able to engage and collaborate with our professionals, which I know you're a big fan of too. You're never saying like, oh, patient, just listen to me, but it's a two-way street. We're
Absolutely.
collaborating, we're communicating, we're finding what's in our best interest, and that is unique to every single person.
Yeah. And I would also just invite people to just check in with yourself periodically and just see if your behaviors are in alignment with kindness to yourself.
Mhm.
Like, is this kind to myself?
Yeah.
Is this decision what's in my best, highest interest? And do I feel like this is out of self love? Or is this
Hmm.
some form of self punishment or something else? Because if it is, then you can realign with the more beneficial mindset there.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
that's a huge struggle too, I think, during the holiday season, is people being kind to themselves. I think there is a lot of judgment, comparison, beating
Yeah.
ourselves up,
Yeah.
and, feeling bad, feeling lonely during this
Yeah.
season. There's a lot.
It's
So,
really hard. Yeah.
yeah. Yeah. So this is also the time, like the perfect time. Don't wait till the new year to get support. It's the perfect time to get support,
Yeah.
because we don't do this thing called life alone. So
Absolutely.
that's what we're here
Yeah.
for.
Really good time to have a therapist for sure.
Yeah. Therapist, doctor,
Mhm.
dietitian. I mean,
Mhm.
just support yourself now.
Yeah.
And then next year, you're going to be feeling great and ready and solid, instead of just kind of like, this is all new to
Yeah.
me.
Absolutely. I
Yeah.
agree with you.
Awesome. So let's just kind of recap, if you could, some categories to be really mindful of. I know you mentioned
Yes.
like sunlight and sleep and movement. Like, could you just kind of give us like the categories of what to pay attention to during this time of year?
Yeah. So I'll start with what we were just talking about mindset, kindness to yourself as the first priority, realigning your or just aligning your circadian rhythm with what is outside. So getting natural light. And even if you live somewhere really cold, like still get outside, expose yourself to the elements. I think people tend to want to be inside more when it's cold, and that can kind of create some dysregulation as well. So just getting outside, aligning yourself to the elements, moving your body in a way that makes sense and feels good to you. You can utilize that as a tool prior to eating, after eating, to kind of help with some of that insulin sensitivity around your food, nutrient density and nutrient quality. So, even if you are eating a lot of sugar or processed foods, making sure that you're still getting in that quality food, making sure you're not skipping meals to save, up for the big meal or whatever. Eat regular meals, keep your blood sugar stable, and yeah, utilize tools of naturopathic medicine. So, there's lots of wonderful liver supportive herbs that you can use, bitters to help you digest your food better. All those things are available pretty much at any, obviously check with your doctor, but pretty much at any like Sprouts or Whole Foods or whatever your local health food store is.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Well, I know this is just touching the tip of the iceberg when it comes to naturopathic medicine, lifestyle medicine, and supporting ourselves. But thank you so much for giving us a little insight on how to go through the holidays and feel like we're thriving instead of just hanging on and surviving.
Absolutely. It's my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Awesome. Thank you so much.